You're sitting alone in your room late at night. The lights are off, the world is quiet, but inside your chest, it feels like a storm is tearing everything apart. Maybe it was a breakup. Maybe it was losing a job you thought was secure. Maybe it was that moment when someone you trusted suddenly walked away and you didn't even get an explanation. And the truth is, you didn't just lose something. You lost a part of yourself. You look around and everything seems blurry, meaningless, almost unreal, like life suddenly tilted and you're the only one trying to keep your balance. You tell yourself, why is this happening? What did I do wrong? Why does pain keep finding me? If you've ever felt that, you're not alone. I've been there too. I've had nights where I felt like the whole world was collapsing, not because of what happened outside, but because of what it awakened inside me. And during those moments, it's so easy to believe that life is punishing you, or that you're being tested beyond what you can handle. But here's the part no one tells you. The part that changes everything once you finally understand it. What if the moments that break you are the moments designed to build you? What if every loss, every disappointment, every why me, is actually pointing you toward a stronger, clearer, more awakened version of yourself, one you couldn't become without passing through the fire first? Think about it. Every powerful story you've ever heard, every hero, every teacher, every wise elder, has a moment when everything falls apart. Not because they were weak, but because life uses disruption to reveal direction. In Buddhism, there's this idea that suffering isn't a punishment, it's a message. A mirror, a doorway. Pain shakes us awake. It interrupts the illusions we cling to. It forces us to see what we've avoided for years. And sometimes, it breaks the version of us that was never meant to survive the next chapter of our life. Let me ask you something. Can you remember a moment in your past when you felt shattered? So shattered you thought you'd never recover? But looking back now, you realize that moment changed everything. Maybe it made you wiser. Maybe it made you more brave. Maybe it made you finally walk away from what was hurting you. If you pay attention, you'll notice a pattern. Life removes things not to punish you, but to redirect you. It doesn't always feel kind, but it is always purposeful. The truth is, we grow the most when we're pushed to the edge of who we thought we were. That edge is uncomfortable. It's terrifying. But it's also the birthplace of transformation. Here's the strange part. When you're in the middle of it, when your heart is heavy, when your future feels uncertain, when nothing makes sense, you can't see the purpose, you only feel the pain. But that doesn't mean the purpose isn't there. It just means you haven't reached the part of the story where everything clicks yet. And if you're going through something right now, something that feels too heavy, too unfair, too painful, I want you to hear this clearly. This moment is not your ending. It's the doorway to who you're becoming. But to understand why life breaks us before it shapes us, you have to look deeper than the pain itself. Because hidden inside every moment of suffering is a lesson most people never notice. And once you see it, your entire perspective on pain completely changes. And that's exactly what we're about to uncover next. 1. Hidden purpose in pain. Let me tell you a story about someone I once knew, someone who could just as easily be you. His name was Daniel. On the outside, he looked like he had everything together. A stable career, a relationship he believed would last, and a future he thought he had mapped out perfectly. But life, as it often does, had a different script waiting for him. One year, everything fell apart at once. The woman he loved ended the relationship without warning. At the same time, the company he worked for downsized, and his position was suddenly no longer essential. And as if those two blows weren't enough, a close friend drifted away right when he needed support the most. It felt like the universe was stripping pieces of his life one by one. And he kept asking himself the same question many of us ask when we hit rock bottom. Why me? What did I do to deserve this? At first, Daniel thought it was punishment, karma, fate, bad luck, whatever you want to call it. He convinced himself he was somehow being pushed into suffering because he had done something wrong. But slowly, painfully, he started to notice something else. There was a moment, one quiet morning, when he sat on the edge of his bed, exhausted from overthinking, and a simple thought floated into his mind. What if this pain isn't here to hurt me, but to teach me? In Buddhism, there's a teaching that says pain is not the enemy. Avoidance is. Pain, when we truly sit with it, becomes a mirror. It shows us what we cling to, what we fear, what we refuse to face. And in Daniel's case, that mirror was brutally honest. He realized he had been building his entire sense of worth on things he couldn't control. People's love, job titles, external approval. And when those things disappeared, he finally had to confront the truth. He didn't know who he was without them. That was the real wound. Not the breakup. Not the job loss. Not the loneliness. The real pain was discovering that he had handed his identity to everything outside himself. But this is where the hidden purpose of pain began to reveal itself. When life takes something away, it often leaves an empty space. And that space is sacred because it's the only place where new understanding can grow. Pain forced Daniel to stop running. It forced him to look inward. It forced him to rebuild, not from the surface, but from the core. He started reading again, journaling, walking in silence, sitting with his emotions instead of fighting them. Some mornings he cried. Some nights he felt lost. But in the middle of that emotional chaos, something unexpected happened. He started discovering himself. He learned that he had ignored his own needs for years. He learned that he tolerated relationships that drained him because he feared being alone. He learned that he stayed in a job he didn't love because he was terrified of uncertainty. The pain didn't create these truths, it simply revealed them. And that's the hidden purpose most people never see. Pain isn't a punishment, it's a teacher. A strict one, yes. A demanding one, absolutely. But also the one that shows us the parts of ourselves we wouldn't look at otherwise. Think about your own life for a moment. What's a pain you've carried that changed you not instantly, not comfortably, but deeply? Maybe it pushed you to set boundaries. Maybe it made you braver. Maybe it opened your eyes to people's true intentions. Or maybe it woke you up to the parts of yourself that needed healing. Pain transforms us because it strips away the illusions we cling to. It forces us to see what truly matters. It breaks the old version of us that can't survive the next chapter. The outside world only sees the breaking. But inside, something else is happening. Something almost invisible unless you're paying attention. Growth, clarity, strength, a softening of the heart, a sharpening of the mind. This is why Buddhist teachers often say that inside every wound, there's a seed. If we water that seed with awareness rather than resistance, it grows into wisdom. But if we fight the pain, if we numb it, avoid it, deny it, it grows into bitterness instead. Daniel realized that the pain he hated so much was actually sculpting him into someone more grounded, more honest, more awake. He didn't get over the pain, he grew through it. And that's the difference. Because real healing isn't forgetting what happened. Real healing is becoming someone who can look back and say, I'm stronger because of this, not in spite of it. And here's the deeper truth. When you open your heart to pain, when you stop treating it like an enemy, you unlock a power you didn't know you had. The power to rebuild yourself. The power to let go of what was never meant for you. The power to rise from the ground with a wiser, steadier sense of who you are. Pain is not here to break you. It's here to shape you. To carve you into someone who can stand in the world with a different kind of strength. The quiet, unshakable kind that comes from surviving what once felt impossible. But there's still one missing piece. One truth that completes this entire transformation. And it's something most people never realize until much later in life. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. 2. Chaos builds your wings. There's a story I want to share with you, one that perfectly captures what chaos does to the human spirit. It's about a woman named Maya. For most of her life, Maya believed in control. She planned everything, her career path, her relationships, even where she'd be living 5 years from now. She liked the feeling of certainty, the illusion that if she tried hard enough, nothing could slip through her fingers. But life doesn't work like that. Life has a way of shaking every foundation you cling to until you finally see what's real. It all started when the startup she worked for collapsed overnight. No warning, no gentle landing, just an email at 6:12 a.m. telling her the company was shutting down. And if that wasn't enough, a relationship she thought was forever fell apart 2 months later. The man she imagined spending her life with told her he needed something different, and that was it. No closure. No clarity. Suddenly, everything she relied on, money, love, direction, was gone. And the chaos that followed wasn't just outside of her. It was inside, too. She woke up each morning with a tightness in her chest, wondering if she had somehow done something wrong. She questioned her worth, her choices, her future. And the worst part was not knowing where to go next. It felt like standing in the middle of a storm, with no map, no shelter, and no guarantee the storm would ever end. But here's the truth that hit her much later. Chaos isn't the end of your story. Chaos is the cocoon. You know how a butterfly grows? Inside the cocoon, everything turns into complete chaos. What once was a caterpillar dissolves into a shapeless, messy liquid, literally falling apart at the molecular level. And only through that breakdown can the wings form. If someone opened the cocoon early trying to help, the butterfly would die. Because it's the pressure, the struggle, the confinement, the chaos that builds the wings strong enough to fly. Maya didn't know she was in her cocoon moment. All she felt was destruction. But slowly, chaos pushed her somewhere she never planned to go, inward. She started spending time alone, real time, not distraction time. Walking in nature, journaling, sitting in silence even though it scared her at first. And in that quiet, something began to shift. She realized that her old life, the one that collapsed, was built on a foundation that was never truly hers. She stayed in her job because it was safe, not because it lit her up. She stayed in her relationship because she was afraid of starting over, not because her heart was alive. She followed plans that were predictable, but not meaningful. Chaos didn't destroy her. It forced her to stop pretending. The more she looked inward, the more she saw that the life she lost wasn't a life aligned with who she really was. And that realization, though painful, became powerful. She asked herself questions she had avoided for years. What do I actually want? What kind of love feels healthy to me? What kind of work gives my soul energy instead of draining it? Those questions became her compass. And here's where the story takes a turn. Chaos didn't just reveal the truth. Chaos built her wings. She discovered a passion for wellness coaching and began taking courses, something she never had time for before. She started rebuilding her social world with people who matched her values instead of her fears. She traveled alone for the first time in her life and discovered a confidence she never knew she had. Her new life didn't appear all at once. It unfolded slowly, like wings drying after leaving the cocoon. But it was stronger, clearer, more truthful. And she would later say something that stayed with me. If everything hadn't fallen apart, I wouldn't have learned how to build a life that was actually mine. Let me ask you something. Has there ever been a moment in your life when chaos ripped through everything familiar, and only later, much later, you realized it pushed you towards something better? Something truer? Something freer? We rarely notice it in the moment because chaos feels violent. It disrupts, It shatters routine. It forces us into the unknown, which is the one place we spend our lives trying to avoid. But in Buddhism, there's a teaching that says, when the world shakes, the heart wakes, because only in the disruption can you see the truth of what was fragile, what was false, and what was never meant to stay. Chaos is not a punishment. Chaos is pressure, and pressure is what creates transformation. Just like the butterfly, your wings are forming in the chaos you fear. Your strength is being carved in the moments you think you're breaking. Your clarity is being shaped in the situations that force you to let go of what you've outgrown. Chaos is uncomfortable. It's messy. It's overwhelming. But it's also the birthplace of your next version. The version of you that rises not because life is easy, but because your wings have finally grown strong enough. And as we move forward, there's one more truth that completes this transformation. A truth about how to meet chaos with wisdom instead of fear. That's what we'll uncover next. 3. The illusion of control. There's someone I want you to meet, at least through this story. His name is Aaron. And if you've ever felt the need to tightly hold everything in your life together, you will see yourself in him. For as long as he could remember, Aaron believed that happiness came from control. If he planned well enough, worked hard enough, anticipated every possible problem, somehow life would bend to his will. He scheduled everything, his mornings, his vacations, even his spontaneous time. He believed that if he didn't manage every detail, everything would collapse. And for a while, this illusion seemed to work. His career was stable. His relationship looked steady. His finances were predictable. But control has a quiet cost. And life eventually presents a moment that exposes the truth we try to avoid. We're not in charge of as much as we think. That moment came for Aaron the day his mother fell seriously ill. One phone call shattered years of careful planning. Suddenly, deadlines didn't matter. Perfect schedules didn't matter. All the things he tried to control slipped right through his fingers, like water. Inside, he felt something crack, not just fear, but the realization that no amount of planning could protect him from the unpredictability of life. And that terrified him. Because underneath Aaron's obsession with control was something deeper. The fear of uncertainty, the fear of loss, the fear of being powerless. And that's where his real struggle began, not with the world outside, but with the storm inside his own mind. He tried even harder to hold everything together, managing his mom's appointments, his job, his relationship, his emotions. But the more he tried to control, the more everything pushed back. His relationship grew tense because he became demanding without realizing it. His work performance slipped because he was mentally exhausted. His mom's condition changed day by day, and no plan he made could stabilize the unpredictable. And with every failed attempt to fix things, he felt more defeated. One night, after a long day at the hospital, he sat alone in his car and whispered, "I can't do this anymore." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was a quiet collapse, the moment where the illusion of control finally broke. That was the night he decided to meet with a meditation teacher a friend had recommended. Not because he wanted enlightenment, but because he was desperate. During their first conversation, the teacher said something Aaron never forgot. "You don't suffer because life is uncertain. You suffer because you believe it shouldn't be." That hit him harder than anything he'd heard before. Because it was true. Life had always been unpredictable. He just built an entire identity around pretending it wasn't. As they continued talking, the teacher explained the Buddhist idea of Wu Wei, effortless alignment. Not laziness. Not giving up, but acting from a place that flows with life, instead of tightening against it. Imagine trying to hold the ocean in your hands, the teacher said. No matter how strong you are, the water escapes. But if you learn to swim with it, the ocean carries you. That metaphor stayed in Aaron's mind. He realized he had been living his whole life trying to grip the water: relationships, outcomes, people, time, even emotions. He never allowed anything to unfold. He was always forcing, pushing, controlling. So he began experimenting with letting go, not in dramatic ways, but subtle ones. He stopped trying to manage every conversation with his partner. He stopped micromanaging his work team. He allowed himself moments of rest without guilt. He even started leaving parts of his day unscheduled, something he once thought was irresponsible. And slowly, the world didn't collapse. In fact, things got easier. His relationship softened. His mind became clearer. His body felt lighter. His decisions became more intuitive. Letting go didn't make him passive. It made him present. And that presence allowed him to handle his mom's health situation with more compassion and far less panic. He couldn't control the outcome, but he could control how he showed up. Here's the question I want to ask you. How much of your suffering comes not from what's happening, but from how tightly you're trying to control it? Think about it. How many arguments began because you needed someone to act the way you expected? How many days were ruined because something didn't go exactly as planned? How many dreams were delayed because you insisted on certainty? The illusion of control is comforting, but it's still an illusion. Life will never move according to our script, and the more we fight that truth, the more we break. But when you release that grip just a little, you discover something surprising. Life begins to flow again. You begin to breathe again. Things find their natural order without force. Letting go is not giving up. Letting go is giving life space to unfold. This is why, in Buddhist teachings, surrender is not weakness. It's clarity. It's wisdom. It's strength. It's the understanding that you can act without attachment. You can give without clinging. You can love without trying to control the outcome. You can walk forward without needing to know exactly how the road ends. Aaron once believed that freedom came from controlling everything. Now he knows that freedom comes from not needing to. And just like him, you have the power to loosen your grip, to stop wrestling with life, and start moving with it. Because when you let go, something magical always happens. Life finally has room to bring you what was meant for you all along. And there's one more truth, one last shift that brings this entire transformation full circle. That's what we'll explore next. 4. Dharma. Trusting life's order. Let me tell you a story. It's about a friend of mine, let's call him Michael. A few years ago, Michael's life fell apart in a way he never saw coming. He lost his job. His long-term relationship ended within the same month. And just when he thought things couldn't get worse, his landlord raised the rent. It felt like life was punishing him. He kept saying, "Why is this happening to me? What did I do wrong?" Maybe you've asked yourself that question too. Most of us have, especially when everything collapses at once. For weeks, Michael was stuck between anger and confusion. He tried to control everything, sent out hundreds of job applications, begged his ex to talk, fought with his landlord, pushed, resisted, tightened his grip on anything he could still hold on to. But the more he fought, the heavier everything felt. It was like trying to swim upstream while the current kept pulling him back. One day, after a particularly exhausting morning, he called me and said, "I feel like my life is falling apart." And I told him something I had learned from Buddhist teachings. Maybe it's not falling apart. Maybe it's falling into place. He didn't understand it at the time. Honestly, most of us don't, until life forces us to. Here's the thing. In Buddhism, there's a word for the deeper order behind everything. Dharma. Dharma isn't fate. It's not luck. It's not the universe testing you. Dharma is the natural order of life, unfolding exactly as it must, even when we can't see the meaning behind it yet. Think of it like this. When you're standing too close to a painting, all you see are messy strokes, lines that don't make sense, colors that clash. But when you step back, the image appears. Life is the same. Up close, it looks like chaos. But from a wider perspective, everything is connected. Every detour, every delay, every ending, every heartbreak. None of it is random. As Michael slowly let go of the idea that he had to force everything to work, something changed. He stopped waking up every morning already fighting with the day. He started asking a different question, not, "Why is this happening to me?" but, "What is this trying to realign me toward?" And that shift alone softened something inside him. You see, Dharma is like a river with a direction. You can exhaust yourself trying to swim against it, or you can learn to float with it. When you stop resisting, the river starts carrying you to where you're meant to be. Within 2 months, something unexpected happened. The job he eventually found wasn't just a job. It was a position that allowed him to use skills he had ignored for years. It paid better. It offered more freedom. And because he was no longer tied to an old relationship built on routine instead of growth, he was free to meet someone who genuinely aligned with him later on. One day he told me, "If those things hadn't fallen apart, I never would have found where I am now." That's Dharma, the invisible order behind the scenes. The quiet intelligence of life, adjusting your path, even when you're convinced it's breaking you. But here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Dharma requires trust. And trust is uncomfortable. Because trusting life doesn't mean everything will feel easy. It doesn't mean you won't lose things or people you love. It doesn't mean the path will unfold the way you imagined. Trusting life means accepting that there's a design larger than your plans. That your mind only sees a moment, while Dharma sees the whole journey. If you think about it, how many times has your life led you somewhere better than you expected, but only after something fell apart first? A job you didn't get, a relationship that ended, a door that closed, a plan that collapsed. And later, sometimes months, sometimes years, you realized, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have become who I am today. That's Dharma in action. So let me ask you something. Just you and me here. Where in your life are you still fighting the river? Where are you trying so hard to control an outcome that you can't even see the possibilities life is trying to open for you? Maybe the thing you're losing isn't a punishment. Maybe it's protection. Maybe it's redirection. Maybe it's the universe removing what no longer fits the person you're becoming. We rarely recognize the wisdom of Dharma in the moment, but we always see it in hindsight. Today, Michael laughs when he remembers how devastated he once felt. He says, "Life was guiding me, but I was too busy resisting to notice." And maybe that's the invitation for you too. To loosen your grip, to trust the unfolding, to allow life to carry you where you're meant to be, not where fear tells you to stay. When you stop fighting the current, you stop drowning. You begin to float, and slowly, gently, naturally, life leads you home. 5. Life as the silent teacher. Let me share a story with you. It's about someone I think you'll recognize. Because in many ways, this person could be you. But for now, let's call her Anna. A few years ago, Anna went through a season of life that almost broke her. She had just ended a long-term relationship, her mother fell ill, and her company announced major layoffs, leaving her unsure of whether she'd still have a job the next month. From the outside, she looked like she was holding it all together. But inside, she felt lost, confused, scared, like she was waking up every day in a fog she didn't know how to escape. Maybe you've had a chapter like that too. A moment where life stops being predictable and suddenly becomes a storm. One day, she told me, "I feel like life keeps throwing lessons at me, and I don't even know what I'm supposed to learn. I looked at her and said gently, maybe life is trying to teach you something, but not in the way you think. In Buddhism, there's this beautiful idea that life itself is the teacher, always teaching, always guiding, even when it feels silent. No lessons printed in bold, no instructions spelled out, just experiences, some soft, some painful, all quietly shaping who we become. Suffering isn't the goal, but suffering has a way of opening our eyes. It forces us to stop running autopilot. It strips away illusions. It shows us what matters, what doesn't, and who we truly are beneath the noise. And that's exactly what started happening to Anna. Her first lesson came through heartbreak. She realized she had been loving from fear, not from freedom. She had been trying to be perfect in the relationship, scared of disappointing, scared of losing, scared of not being enough. But one night, sitting alone in her apartment, she whispered to herself, "Why am I so afraid of being honest?" It was the first time she saw herself clearly, not the version she tried to present to the world, but the real version. Vulnerable, tender, human. In that moment, heartbreak became her teacher. It taught her that love without authenticity is just performance. And she deserved more than that. Then came the lesson of letting go. When her mother's health declined, Anna tried to fix everything. Every detail, every outcome, every fear disguised as control. But illness has a way of reminding us that life is not ours to command. One day, sitting beside her mother's bed, she held her hand and realized something powerful. She couldn't stop the waves, but she could choose how she met them. Letting go didn't mean giving up. It meant shifting from panic to presence. From, "I must control this," to, "I will walk this with love." Compassion became her teacher, teaching her tenderness, patience, and strength she never knew she had. And then came the lesson of resilience. When the layoffs became official, her name was unexpectedly on the list. She told me later, "It felt like everything was being taken away from me at once." But what looked like loss on the surface became clarity underneath. Her job, she finally admitted, had been draining her for years, quietly eating away at her joy. She stayed because it was familiar, not because it was right. And sometimes life removes what you refuse to walk away from. Uncertainty became her teacher. It pushed her to rediscover skills she had forgotten. It pushed her to reinvent herself. It pushed her to trust the part of her that was stronger than her fear. You see, life teaches in whispers before it teaches in storms. But when we ignore the whispers, life raises its voice. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every unexpected change, every quiet night when you're left alone with your thoughts, they aren't punishments. They're invitations. Invitations to see your patterns, to face your fears, to soften your heart, to grow in ways you wouldn't choose, but absolutely need. And this is something Buddhism reminds us beautifully. Enlightenment isn't found in temples or mountains. It's found in the raw, unfiltered moments of everyday life. It's the ability to see clearly, to wake up, to recognize that every experience, good or bad, is shaping your wisdom. The world doesn't always speak loudly, but it always speaks truth. A few months later, Anna told me something I'll never forget. She said, "I used to think life was against me. Now I realize life was teaching me how to return to myself." Her suffering didn't vanish overnight. It transformed her from the inside out. She learned how to love without losing herself, how to let go without falling apart, how to stay open even when it hurt, how to trust the unfolding even when she didn't understand it. Life was her silent teacher, and she was finally listening. So let me ask you, gently but honestly, what is life trying to teach you right now? Maybe it's asking you to soften. Maybe it's asking you to release something. Maybe it's asking you to forgive yourself or someone else. Or maybe, just maybe, it's asking you to see that you're stronger, wiser, and more capable than you've ever given yourself credit for. Whatever the lesson is, you don't have to learn it perfectly. You just have to stay open, because life is always teaching. An awakening begins the moment you start paying attention. 6. Impermanence frees you. Let me tell you a story about someone named Daniel. And if you've ever struggled with change or felt terrified of losing what you love, you might see a part of yourself in him. A few years ago, Daniel's life looked solid, predictable, safe. He had a stable job, a long-term relationship, a comfortable routine he thought would last forever. But that's the thing about forever. It's something we wish for, not something life promises. One morning, everything shifted. His partner told him she needed space, real space, not just time to think. A week later, his company announced restructuring. His role gone. Just like that. He said it felt like the ground had disappeared beneath him. Like he was free-falling. No warning. No preparation. No chance to catch his breath. And if you've ever felt life collapse all at once, you know exactly what that moment feels like. The fear, the confusion, the desperate wish for things to just go back to how they were. Daniel kept telling me, "I just want my life the way it used to be." But the truth is, life wasn't listening. Buddhism teaches something difficult to accept, but deeply liberating. Everything changes. Everything. Pain changes. Joy changes. People change. Opportunities change. Even the version of you listening to this, you won't be the same person a year from now. And this isn't meant to scare us. It's meant to free us. But in the middle of losing everything, Daniel didn't feel free at all. He felt betrayed by life, punished. He kept clinging to what was already gone, like trying to hold river water in his hands. The tighter he held on, the more it slipped through. One evening, after weeks of fighting the changes, he broke down. He told me he was afraid he'd never feel joy again. So I asked him something simple. When was the last time you felt true happiness? He paused, thinking, and then he laughed softly. Honestly, I was 16, riding my bike downhill in the summer. Wind in my face. No worries. Just free. I smiled and said, "That moment didn't last forever either, right?" He shook his head. "Exactly," I said. "And yet you cherish it. Its impermanence didn't ruin the moment. It made it beautiful." Something shifted in him. It was the first time he saw that not all endings are tragedies. Some endings are simply endings, part of the natural movement of life. A few days later, he came back with a question that showed me he was waking up. If everything changes, does that mean I can change too? That's when the real transformation began. He started seeing his life not as something falling apart, but something opening. Losing his relationship created space for him to reconnect with himself. Losing his job pushed him to pursue a field he had secretly wanted for years: environmental design. A field he always told himself he'd explore someday. And here's the beautiful part. Impermanence gave him that someday. The life he thought was ending was just redirecting. But the deepest lesson came unexpectedly. One morning, while walking through a park, he watched a leaf fall slow, gentle, effortless, and he told me that moment changed him more than any book or advice. He said, "The leaf didn't fight the wind. It didn't cling to the branch. It let go when it was time." and it still landed gracefully. He paused, then said quietly, "Maybe I can do that too." That's when he finally understood the heart of impermanence. Change isn't the enemy. Clinging is. Impermanence isn't chaos. It's the reason growth is possible. It's the reason pain doesn't last forever. It's the reason new beginnings are always waiting. You see, we fear impermanence because we think it threatens our happiness. But what if it's the very thing protecting it? If everything stayed the same, every mistake, every heartbreak, every version of us, we would never evolve. Impermanence removes what's no longer aligned. It shifts us, rearranges us, rebuilds us. Yes, sometimes it hurts. But every season changes for a reason. Even winter, cold and raw, holds the quiet promise of spring. Months later, Daniel told me something that proved how far he'd come. He said, "I used to think change was taking things from me. Now I see it was giving me back my life." He wasn't the same man he used to be, and he was grateful for that. The fear that once controlled him had transformed into trust. Not trust that things would always go his way, but trust that he could meet life with an open heart, no matter what happened. And that's what impermanence does. It softens us. It frees us. It reminds us that we can begin again, as many times as we need. So let me ask you, what are you holding on to that no longer holds you? A past version of yourself? A relationship that already ended in spirit? A job that drains you? A fear of losing what was never meant to stay forever? You don't have to force anything today. You don't have to let go all at once. Just notice. Notice what life is trying gently to move you away from, and what it's quietly guiding you toward. Because impermanence isn't here to break you. It's here to set you free. And the moment you stop fighting change, you'll feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Lightness, hope, possibility, a new beginning waiting right at your feet. 7. Your identity must break to expand. Picture someone named Daniel. Maybe, on some level, he reminds you of yourself. For most of his life, Daniel carried a very clear idea of who he was supposed to be. The reliable one, the strong one, the one who always had a plan, always stayed in control, always did the right thing, at least according to what his family, teachers, and society told him. And for a long time, that identity felt safe, like armor, like something that held him together. But here's the truth. Most of us learn the hard way. Armor is heavy, and sooner or later, life will ask you to put it down. Daniel didn't understand that yet, not until everything he built started to crack. It began slowly at first, little things. The job he thought he wanted suddenly felt empty. The relationship he thought would last forever fell apart in a single conversation. The future he was so certain about dissolved overnight. And as those pieces of his life shattered, something inside him shattered too. If you've ever felt that moment when the version of you've spent years building suddenly slips through your fingers, you know how terrifying it is. You don't just lose a job. You don't just lose a relationship. You lose the identity attached to it. And when that identity breaks, the fear comes rushing in. Who am I without that? What do I have left? What if there's nothing beyond this version of me? Daniel asked himself those same questions. He resisted. He held on. He tried to glue his old life back together, even though every sign was telling him it was time to let it fall apart. But this is where Buddhist wisdom steps in, with a truth that feels uncomfortable, yet deeply liberating. Your identity must break for you to expand. Not because life is cruel, but because your old self was too small for who you're meant to become. Think of a seed. To become a tree, the seed must split open. From the outside, that split looks like destruction. But from the inside, it's transformation. Daniel wasn't being punished. He was being opened. Of course, he didn't see it that way. Not yet. Most of us don't. When life cracks us open, we see the breaking, not the becoming. We see the loss, not the space it creates. We see the ending, not the beginning, quietly unfolding beneath it. For weeks, Daniel felt stuck between two worlds, too broken to go back, but too afraid to move forward. Have you ever been in that in-between place? Where nothing is familiar anymore, and every step feels like walking through fog? It's uncomfortable, lonely. Sometimes it feels like failure. But in Buddhism, that space is sacred. Because that's where the ego dissolves. That's where the self you've outgrown finally steps aside. One night, after months of fighting the changes, Daniel sat alone in his apartment. No distractions, no noise, no one expecting anything from him. And for the first time, he allowed himself to simply feel the truth he had been avoiding. He wasn't losing himself. He was losing the version of himself that was too small. The next few months didn't magically become easy. Real growth rarely feels clean or comfortable. But something shifted. Instead of trying to rebuild the exact life he had before, Daniel started asking new questions. What if this ending is an invitation? What if I'm allowed to become someone new? What if the identity I was clinging to was never truly mine? Slowly, he experimented. He tried things that once scared him. He stopped pretending he was always okay. He allowed himself to be honest, raw, unfinished. He realized the roles he played were never who he truly was. They were labels, masks, costumes he wore because he thought he had to. And as those layers fell away, something surprising happened. He felt lighter, more alive, more real. This is the hidden gift inside identity collapse. When the ego breaks, the true self finally has room to breathe. Here's the part many people miss. Growth doesn't happen when everything is going right. Growth happens when the old you becomes too small, and life refuses to let you shrink yourself anymore. Every shock, every disappointment, every unexpected twist, these aren't random events. They're cracks in the shell. They're life's way of saying, there is more in you. Stop hiding inside who you used to be. Think about your own life for a moment. Where have you been holding on too tightly? To a role? A story? An identity that once protected you but now limits you? What if you stopped fighting the breaking? What if you trusted that something larger was trying to emerge? Because here's what Daniel learned, and what you'll eventually learn too. Breaking doesn't mean the end. Breaking is a beginning in disguise. And maybe, just maybe, the version of you that's trying to be born is stronger, freer, and more expansive than anything you've ever been before. So the next time you feel everything falling apart, don't rush to rebuild the old. Pause. Breathe. Listen. Life might be asking you to grow into someone you never imagined, but someone you were always meant to become. 8. Turning suffering into wisdom. Meet Sarah. Her story might feel familiar to you. Sarah had always been the kind of person who believed life was meant to be fair. She followed the rules, worked hard, treated people well. And yet, life, in its unpredictable way, didn't exactly reward her the way she expected. She lost her job unexpectedly. A relationship she had trusted for years ended abruptly. Her health took a scary turn. For a while, it felt like everything she thought she could count on had vanished. If you've ever been in a place where life seems to punch harder than you can take, you know that feeling. That deep, gnawing ache that asks, why me? Sarah asked herself that question 1,000 times, and for a while, it swallowed her. Every morning, she woke up wondering, why am I the one going through this? Why does pain always find me? She felt betrayed by life, by the universe, by herself. The questions kept looping. They were loud, relentless, crushing. And here's the thing. It's a natural reaction. Most of us instinctively try to fight suffering, to resist it, to question its fairness. But there's a subtle, transformative wisdom hidden in a question many of us rarely ask. What is this suffering trying to teach me? Sarah didn't see it at first. Not until one sleepless night, while scrolling through an old journal, she stumbled upon a passage she had written years before. Every challenge is a doorway. Every wound is a guide. She paused. Something shifted. The question didn't feel like an accusation anymore. It felt like an invitation. That night, she tried something radical. Instead of asking, "Why me?" she asked, "What is this showing me?" At first, it was uncomfortable. Pain is not polite. It doesn't immediately reveal its lessons. But slowly, as Sarah began to look for meaning rather than blame, things started to change. She realized her job loss had forced her to rediscover passions she had ignored for years. The breakup, painful as it was, showed her patterns she needed to let go, of ways she had been clinging to relationships out of fear rather than love. Her health scare nudged her to slow down, to reconnect with her body, and to finally appreciate the fragility and beauty of life. Each piece of suffering became like clay in her hands. At first, it felt heavy, sharp, unforgiving. But gradually, with attention and reflection, she started to shape it into insight, into clarity, into wisdom. Here's the Buddhist perspective that changed everything for her. Suffering is not meaningless. It's not a punishment. It's a teacher, sometimes harsh, sometimes silent, but always precise. If we open ourselves to its lessons, pain becomes a material we can craft into understanding, into resilience, into compassion. Sarah began to notice something remarkable. As she reframed her struggles, she started to see the world differently. Her pain no longer dominated her life, it illuminated it. Every disappointment, every heartbreak, every fear became a lantern showing her the next step forward. Instead of reacting with anger or despair, she learned to pause, reflect, and ask, "How can I grow from this? How can this make me wiser?" Think about your own life for a moment. Where have you been stuck in the loop of, "Why me?" What if you flipped the question? What if you asked, "What can this teach me?" There's a subtle magic in this shift. It doesn't erase the hurt. It doesn't make failure or loss feel good, but it changes the way you carry it. Pain becomes fuel instead of chains. Heartbreak becomes a mirror showing you patterns to release. Struggle becomes a teacher guiding you toward a more awakened way of living. Sarah's journey didn't make her immune to suffering. She still felt fear. She still felt grief. But she discovered something far more powerful. She could meet suffering without resistance. She could sit with it, learn from it, and transform it into wisdom. And here's the final, most radical insight. When you stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What is this showing me?" you step into a new kind of freedom. You begin to see life not as a series of random blows, but as a conversation, a dialogue, where every challenge, every scar, every failure is offering guidance. If you listen, truly listen, the very things that once weighed you down become the tools that build you up. Sarah isn't special. Her story isn't extraordinary. It's just a mirror of what every human being faces. The difference lies in the choice to shift perspective, to turn suffering into wisdom, to see that even the darkest moments carry light. So the next time life knocks you down, pause. Before you ask, "Why me?" Instead, breathe and ask, "What is this moment trying to teach me?" Because when you start seeing pain as a teacher, you start turning every wound into a lantern, every setback into guidance, and every hardship into a stepping stone toward the person you are truly capable of becoming. Quick summary and key takeaways. So, let's take a moment to step back and really breathe in everything we've explored together. Think about all those moments of pain, confusion, and chaos we've talked about. The times when life seemed to break us, when we lost control, when we thought we might never recover. What if I told you none of that was meaningless? What if every heartbreak, every loss, every why me moment was quietly shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and more awake than you realize? Here's the truth that keeps coming up again and again. Pain isn't a punishment. Chaos isn't your enemy. And suffering, yes, even the kind that leaves you sleepless at night, isn't permanent unless you make it so by clinging and resisting. When you step back, you see a pattern. Life has its own rhythm, its invisible order, what in Buddhism we call dharma. And when you stop struggling against that current, when you trust that there's a flow guiding you, something remarkable happens. You feel lighter. You notice the small openings in life, the tiny doors that lead to growth, resilience, and inner freedom. Every lesson we've talked about points to this. Pain can teach you, if you're willing to listen. It's the teacher that refuses shortcuts, the mentor that challenges you to grow. Chaos is a catalyst. Without the storms, the turbulence, the cracks in our world, we would never build the wings to fly. Suffering doesn't last forever unless we try to control it, hold on to it, or resist it. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means creating room for peace. Trusting the unseen order. The Dharma doesn't guarantee a life without hardship, but it guarantees that your heart will have a place to land, and that your journey will have meaning. Imagine looking back at all the difficult moments in your own life and realizing every setback, every heartbreak, every time you felt powerless was actually carving a path toward the person you were meant to become. That's the beauty of it. That's the quiet, hidden gift of living fully and awake. And here's what I want you to feel as you close this chapter of the video. Your life is not out to punish you. It's teaching you, lifting you, guiding you to the right path. The wisdom is in the noticing. The growth is in the walking through it. And the awakening, it's happening right now, in the very moments you are living. So, take a deep breath and ask yourself, what is this moment teaching me? How is this challenge shaping me into the version of myself I'm meant to be? Every pain, every chaos, every struggle is an opportunity. And if you let it, it can transform you from the inside out. And maybe, just maybe, the person who watches this and thinks, this is exactly what I needed to hear today. That's the person who will carry this lesson forward, quietly, with strength, courage, and a little more trust in life's mysterious rhythm. So pause for a moment. Think about someone in your life who could use this reminder. Or think about yourself, and know this: awakening isn't somewhere far away. It's not a destination. It's here, in the way you meet today's struggles, in the lessons you choose to see, and in the courage you find to keep walking forward. Because the truth is simple. Life isn't punishing you. Life is teaching you. And when you listen, really listen, you'll find that every hardship is a doorway. Every challenge is a guide. Every moment, no matter how hard, is part of the path leading you toward the most awake, resilient, and liberated version of yourself. And that, perhaps, is the most beautiful lesson of all.